Hi, I'm Brian, Service Manager, Whole Latte Love, and today we're going to talk about why your portafilter may not be clocking at 6 o'clock on your group head.
We're also going to change like a group gasket, take a look at some of those.
Exactly. I'll pop it off and show you how to replace it real quick. So just so you know what we're talking about here, in case you've never heard the term clocking, it just refers to where exactly on the group head your portafilter ends when you have it snugged in. So ideally, you'd love to have it at 6 o'clock. Looks the prettiest. Doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with your machine if it's off a little bit one way or the other. There are tons of reasons for this. Good thing to note is the machine right now, we have it unplugged and it's been off all day, so it's nice and cold. Whether or not the machine is hot can affect how far in this is going to clock. If it's been on for the whole day, the group head's nice and warm. It'll also warm up your gasket a little bit, which makes it a little bit more pliable, and you can get it snugged in a little bit further. So seeing this not directly at 6 o'clock does not necessarily mean that there's an issue. So that's the thing I just wanted to go over first of all. It also depends on other aspects such as your basket. Let's say you took your basket completely out and put it in. You're way over there.
So the height of that basket above the rim, and
exactly.
they might be a little different between different baskets. So.
Yeah, different companies may have a slightly different shape or height, and it doesn't take a lot to make a big difference when you're clocking in like that, which I'll show you a little bit more on shortly here.
And underclocking is really going to be quite common on a brand new machine, right? I mean,
yes.
You might only get to 7 because that gasket's not broken in at all.
Exactly. So don't be surprised if on your brand new machine it may only be to,
7?
Yeah,
6:30?
6:30, somewhere around there. Not uncommon at all. And like I said, once the machine is fully heated up and you've used it a few times, you'll start clocking to 6. And basically just the further you end up getting, if you haven't changed anything as far as your basket goes and you notice that you're slowly over time starting to go and go and go, that's showing that your group gasket is starting to wear in or out.
So you've got some at different levels of wear here. Right?
Yep. So this is relatively new. We've probably only used that a handful of times. This one is probably a few months old. This one is probably at least a year old, maybe a little bit longer.
And you're looking at that big track in there. Right?
Yep. So yeah, you see that big old ridge in there, and this also obviously you can't feel through the screen, but this is much stiffer than here. I can feel flex in here. I can feel flex in here, and here it's maybe a little bit of flex, but not much left. This should be replaced if yours looks like this, because if it hasn't started leaking already, it's probably going to start leaking soon. But the reason that this affects your clocking is obviously this ridge. The more that ridge goes down and down and down over time, the higher you need to, further you need to turn your portafilter to get it to seal up against it. So that is an overtime issue if you see that you're starting to clock over way towards, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock. If you clock too far, you can't even open up your lever, then you definitely got a problem. You should probably replace that gasket.
Okay.
So as you saw before, what we have in here right now is clocking out that way. What we did is, this was to show you the difference half a millimeter can make. What we have in there is a 8 millimeter group gasket when this machine actually needs an 8.5 millimeter. So what I'm going to do is pop that out. I use a flathead that I have taped up so I'm not gouging up the group head. Go in there, just find the ridge of the shower screen and pry down lightly. Don't go in too crazy like I just did. You might scratch, like that. I'm trying not to be in the way, so. Be more careful than I just was taking it out. You don't want to start scratching up your screen there.
Sure.
So, like I said, this is an 8 millimeter. It's written right on it. Another thing to note is when you're replacing these, there is writing on these. If you can see that.
Yep.
Writing side goes up. So, screen. And you'll also note that the gasket itself is flat on one end and has slight bevel on the other. Bevel side up, just in case there's no writing on it.
Now,
sometimes there's not.
These two are fun colors, and these are kind of bland black. What's going on?
So these two are both silicone. These are not. These are like, I forget the exact compound or whatever, but it's basically rubber.
Yeah.
So these have a lot more elasticity. I can go like this to the silicone rings. Nope. Don't want to break that.
Yeah.
But you'll also see that it's also slightly deformed now. I can wiggle it back into a good shape, or it'll go fine once I get it in there. But with the silicone.
And these you don't have to like crank down on quite so much, right? To get
exactly.
A good seal.
Yeah. These have a really
easy.
nice seal to them, really easily. It's really tempting when you first put the silicone ones in to kind of crank down extra hard like you would with the old rubber ones.
But you really don't need to.
Yeah, you really don't need to. So I'll throw this one back in. Use my thumb and my middle finger to kind of ridge up in where the wings for the portafilter would go, and then just cinch around. And the silicone ones always go in much easier as long as you've cleaned everything out first. And then I use portafilter, just get it in. So right here, I know I could press it over a little bit further. I don't need to do that.
But you don't really need to.
I don't need to. This is snug right here, right at 6 o'clock. Anything more, I'm just doing new damage to the gasket. It's going to shorten the lifespan of it if you over crank it when you don't need to. So just don't do that.
And that's just a half a millimeter.
Yep. So if you remember where it was clocking before, it was about there.
Yeah.
So that's the difference a half a millimeter can make. So it's important to make sure that you're getting the right size gasket for your machine and that you're changing it out when it starts getting worn out like that.
And I know, like on an older machine, you probably want to go with the taller gasket.
Yeah, over time, you'll start to get wear inside. It's not exactly where the gasket sits, but if you look down along the channel here where the portafilter goes in, it's going to start slowly wearing that down. Good old erosion. So what's going to happen is you're going to need a little bit extra space coming down to compensate for that. So if you're already at like an 8.5 millimeter and you're starting to not clock right and your machine's 10, 15 years old or something like that, you can also get a spacer. They make just little cardboard 0.5 millimeter spacers that you can put in underneath. So it would be the gasket and then the paper shim would go on top of that.
Okay.
And like that. And that just adds you that extra 0.5 millimeter.
All right.
So, but
all right.
That's about all there is to it. Like I said, there's definitely not a sign that there is something wrong, but it gives you something to look for if you start clocking way too far out.
All right, Brian, thanks for taking us through that.
Yeah, not a problem.